All right, Boker Tov. So today's Daf is Chaf Gimel. We pick up at the bottom of Chaf Bet Amud Bet, and we have we're dealing with the question about a brother who's a mamzer still has the status of brother for these halachot, or for all halachot. A son who's a mamzer has a full status of son. The one exception is a child, actually, not only son, but who is a child born of a shifcha, of a slave, or of a non-Jewish woman who's not considered a person's legal son, legal child. And that's the Gemara yesterday had a whole question which seemed a little bit off topic, is that if a person man sleeps with his sister, who's also the daughter of his father's wife, is that two prohibitions or one? And is there an additional aspect of it being prohibited also as daughter of father's wife, in addition to being sister? And the reason that this is relevant is because the approach that says that is only one prohibition, achos, there's only the prohibition of sister. The Gemara is going to ask, why do we need the verse that speaks about father's wife? So that's where we pick up, and that will tie into our main theme. So if you take a look here, it's about 10 lines from the bottom on Chaf Bet Amud Bet. The line starts with the word Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, Im Kain, the line starts with the word he. So about midway in that line, Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, Hai Bas Eishes Avicha Ma'avidlei. So according to Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, that says that there's only one prohibition of sister. It's no different if it is. So one more time. This was just okay. What's going on here? Okay, so again, Chaf Bet Amud Bet, where it says, one more time for Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. So for Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, about 8 lines from the bottom. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, Hai Bas Eishes Avicha Ma'avidlei. What does Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda do with the prohibition of why the verse says the daughter of your father's wife, if according to him there's only one prohibition of sister, regardless of whether your father was married to your sister's mother or not? So why does the verse is there a need for an additional verse that speaks about the daughter of your father's wife? So what does he do with that verse? And this is why we brought this whole thing in. The only person who is considered to be your sister halachically is a woman who marriage is possible with your father. Ishus lavicha. But prat la'achosa mishifcha ve'ladesgochavim, to exclude your sister that comes from a from either a slave or a non-Jewish woman. Shein ishus lavicha ba. Your father cannot have, and marriage is not possible, and therefore she is not defined as your sister. So this was the point of bringing the whole discussion of a sister, and there's another prohibition of daughter of father's wife, to get to this pasuk and to Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, who learns from this that someone is only considered a sister if she comes from a woman that your father could have married, and that the child of a non-Jewish woman or the child of a female slave is not considered to be a person's child. Legally, is not legally a person's child. So the Gemara says, the ema prat lachosa. So if that's true, that it's excluded because there's no marriage with such a woman, there's a lot of other people we could have included in that category. So first of all, the Gemara says, the ema prat lachosa me'anusa. How about a woman that just happens not to be married to your father? Marriage is possible, but happens not to be. That would sort of be how, like the idea that's been in sort of, in general, in larger society of bastard is a child that is born from somebody who's not a man's legal wife. So maybe and that's not a person's legal child. So maybe a child from a woman who is not the father's wife is not considered a legal child. So again, the Gemara also using the case of anusa, rape, rather than other cases like mefuta, which we've mentioned before, is problematic. But anyway, hahi lo matzasamris. You can't say that. You can't say a child from someone who isn't a wife is not legally a child. From Rava to Rava Rami. Rava shows a contradiction. See, one verse says, "Evas bas bincha bas bincha lo sigalet." So it says, "Do not reveal the nakedness of your granddaughter, your son's daughter, your daughter's daughter." Habas binadida, ubas bitadida, which suggests, and to emphasize your granddaughter, that if it's just your wife's granddaughter and not your own, so shari, it would be permissible. But another verse says, "Ervasi sho bitalo sigalet." Do not reveal the nakedness of a woman and her daughter, espas binav, espas bita, or her granddaughter. So one verse says your granddaughter, the other verse says her granddaughter. Now, I'm not exactly clear to me why this is such a problem, because a lot of verses prohibit a lot of things, but somehow the Gemara feels that this is that the first verse suggests not her granddaughter, and here it says yes, her granddaughter. Haketzad, how do you reconcile it? Kan ba'on sin, kan b'nisuin. It depends whether, again, rape, which is always the phrase the Gemara uses when it talks about non-marital. Again, don't know why it's always going to the rape case. And the other is a case of marital. So if you're married to the woman, then you cannot have sex with her granddaughter. But if you're not married to the woman, then her granddaughter is not a problem. It is only if it is your granddaughter that is a problem. Now, why is any of that relevant? Because in the scenario where you're not married to the woman, it is still telling you that your granddaughter, so your granddaughter that emerged from the union of you and this woman you're not married to. So in that case, your granddaughter is forbidden. Her granddaughter is not. Okay, man is sleeping with a woman he's not married to. If he has a granddaughter that's not his, not a problem. But a granddaughter that is his with this woman is a problem. So it says, you see that a child that comes from a non-marriage situation, this man is sleeping with this woman he's not married to, the child is still his, and the granddaughter is still considered his. So if somebody is considered to be a legal child, even not in the context of marriage, then presumably, if that's true about this man's child, it would also be true that it would be somebody's sister or somebody's brother. Okay, is that clear? Meaning the suggestion is, how do we know this idea that somebody is not? This is not the mamzer question. Okay, this is the question about not a legal child. It's not considered to be a legal child. Again, in English, we tend to think bastard. That's what it means, not a legal child. And we tend to say that it comes outside of the context of when it's born not in the context of a legal marriage. But that's not halachically. Halachically, that's the point of this Mishnah. Any brother mikol makom, child mikol makom, even mamzer, even whatever, it's all considered to be somebody's legal child, with the exception of the child of a shifcha and any non-Jewish woman. So the Gemara says, well, how do you know? If it's based on the fact that there can't be marriage with a shifcha non-Jewish woman, maybe we should say any child that results from a union that was conceived outside of wedlock. So the Gemara says it's not true. Since we know that there's a prohibition of arayos with a grandchild that is resulted from a non-wedlock situation, right? So therefore, clearly somebody's still considered a legal child when they result from a non-wedlock situation. And if that's true, would also be considered a legal sibling. So we cannot just say that anybody born out of wedlock is not considered a child. So then the Gemara says, top of Chav Gimel Amud Aleph, ve'ema prat l'chayve lavim, okay? But fine. So you want to say it's just that it happens to be out of wedlock. But maybe it's things that you're not allowed, women you're not allowed to marry, even if, and that any type of a union that was not legal, the child shouldn't be a legal child. So for example, a woman that's just prohibited by a negative prohibition, like let's say a grusha to a kohen, or a case of a mamzeres or a mamzer. So Amar Rav Papa, chayvi lavim tafsi behu kiddushin. No. We know that, and this is what we've been saying all along, that marriage is binding in a union that is prohibited just by a simple negative prohibition. Marriage is only not binding if it's a union that is kares, okay, but a union that's a simple negative prohibition, like the prohibitions of a kohen, or cases of, let's say, mamzer, or kris shivcha, etc., those cases marriage is binding. And since marriage is binding, therefore it would not be categorically different than other cases where maybe there is even when there isn't marriage, we said that the child is considered a legal child. So here too, even if it's prohibited, since marriage is possible and would be binding if it happened, the child would be a legal child. Now, how do we know that marriage is binding in this case? If a man has two wives, one beloved and one hated. So the Gemara says a funny question, because the point in the pasuk is this man doesn't like this wife, and therefore he wants to disinherit the son. But the Gemara assumes that, well, obviously just because he wanted to disinherit, that wouldn't give a legal basis for it. So it seems that maybe the point of the pasuk is to tell you a chiddush, that even though there's some objective way the woman is less desired and less appropriate, maybe, and that should be the basis for disinheriting the son. So what would that be? Is there any woman who is not beloved before God? Yes, it means one is beloved in the marriage, meaning it's a legitimate marriage, and the other is hated in the marriage. Not about the man's feelings for her, but that the marriage should not have taken place. Why? Because there was a negative prohibition, so the marriage should not have taken place. The Amar Rachmana, so that's the scenario. So it wants to make a bigger chiddush in the pasuk. It's not just that the man doesn't like his wife and wants to disinherit. There's a reason that the woman should be and her child should be considered less entitled because they weren't supposed to have been married this man. There was a negative prohibition. And nevertheless, for Amar Rachmana, kitiyena, if this woman belongs to this man, meaning havaya, whatever the words to be, the Gemara understands that means that is referring to the context of marriage. Kitiyena li'ish nashim. He's married to these two women. So you see that even a case where it's prohibited by a negative prohibition, that's whatever. That's the drasha. So that's the minimum case that something is not a non-acceptable marriage. Nevertheless, the pasuk is telling you that the marriage is binding. So what we have is the following: we have that somebody born from a woman that marriage is not possible with is not a person's legal son. So the Gemara says, well, maybe it just means that marriage didn't happen to take place with a normal woman just out of wedlock. It says that can't be. Because we know within the world of arayos, a child born out of wedlock is still considered a child. And like a person's granddaughter out of wedlock is still his granddaughter and so on. So out of wedlock doesn't change the story. Okay, says the Gemara, but maybe it's things that marriage is prohibited with. And like a simple lotas. And Gemara says, no, the concept is that marriage isn't, once we say out of wedlock doesn't matter, then the next category you go to is that wedlock is not even possible. It's excluded from the category of wedlock. Somehow just being prohibited would not have been enough to change the possible status of the child. So the next place to move, if you say out of wedlock doesn't change the status, would be wedlock is not possible, not just that the act is prohibited. And therefore, simple negative prohibitions do not create a non-legitimate child because their marriage is possible, marriage is binding. Of course, the next stage is, okay, fine, but there's another category before you get to a non-Jewish woman that marriage is impossible, marriage isn't binding, which is not just a negative prohibition, but everything we've been talking about, the Yisrei Kares, all of the weightier, arayot, marriage isn't binding. So if a man goes ahead and has sex with a married woman, or has sex with his aunt or his sister, all those things that produce mamzer, that's not just that it happens to be out of marriage. That's not just that it's prohibited. That actually is a case in which marriage wouldn't even be binding at all. So if that's the logic, a child that is produced from a union in which marriage is not possible, then every case of a mamzer essentially should also be a person's non-legitimate child, not just mamzer. Mamzer means the child can't marry somebody else, but still it's a legitimate child in the sense about inherits him, all of the legal statuses of child and sibling or whatever, that's our Mishnah applied by mamzer. And this is what the Gemara is asking, why should that be? So let's take a look. The Ema, so why don't we say prat l'chayve krisos? Fine, it excludes people that cases in which the union is prohibited by kares, where marriage isn't possible at all. So let's say the child from that union is not only a mamzer, but not a person's legal child. So Amar Rava, so says Rava, Amar Kral, the verse says, the nakedness of your sister, your daughter, your father's daughter, your mother's daughter, whether born in the house or outside. So what does that mean? In the house or outside? Whether they tell your father keep your wife, or they tell your father get rid of your wife. Meaning, even if it's in the case where he's married to a arayot, the child that results is still considered to be your sister. Your sister. Okay, now it's not exactly clear to me that, again, maybe that's just a case of lav. How do you know it's a case of kares? But you could say that we already addressed the case of lav before, so this is going one step further to address the case of kares. Also, maybe the idea of omim lavicha hotzei, get rid of her, divorce her. Well, again, you could go both ways. You could say if he needs to divorce her, it shows that the marriage is binding. But maybe the point that the Gemara is saying is hotzei, meaning that even in a case where there's not any marriage at all, that the marriage isn't binding at all, like it's an isser kares, nevertheless, the child that results is still considered to be your sister. Okay, so that's what it learns from Moledes Chutz, even born from a union that was not even able, a woman who was not able to even be in the house, as it were, a woman that marriage wasn't binding with. Nevertheless, the child still is the man's legal child, and therefore your sister. Yes.
Embarrassingly, I've forgotten. What are we? In other words, the offspring of a slave or of a pagan woman?
Non-Jewish. Yes.
I've lost like the main.
Is not your legal child.
Yeah, and therefore.
Therefore, well, first of all, it wouldn't be Jewish, but besides the Jewish aspect, here is, let's say, if you die, they would not inherit from you. If your if you have the child, if you have a sibling that was the result of that was your half brother, because the mother was a non-Jewish woman, then that sibling wouldn't be involved in the process of yibum, right? So if a man had a child from a non-Jewish woman and he died, his wife would still be obligated in yibum. His Jewish wife would still be obligated in yibum. So for all those halachot, it's not considered a person's legal child.
With a sister, then it would.
Yes, absolutely. A mamzer, if a person had a child with his sister or with a married woman, and even though the child is a mamzer, and then he dies, his wife is exempt from yibum. And a person also is mekayim pruravu, by the way. So it's quite ironic, right, that to accept the idea that there's a difference between mamzer and legal child. And two things. First of all, right, in our concept, when we use the word bastard, we mean basically all we mean is the idea of a legal child. We don't have a different idea of mamzer, and we assume it applies to any child born out of wedlock. Again, by halacha, it's different. Mamzer is any child born as a result of an isser kares, and the only halacha of a mamzer, I mean, it's not only, but it's whatever. I mean, it's profound, but it's the only halacha is that he or she cannot marry somebody else, a non-mamzer. Okay, but that's not that the person isn't the person's legal child. So again, even if mamzer results from a incest or from adultery and all those things, person fulfills puravu, the child inherits him. If the guy dies, his wife is exempt from. If the guy's, it could be a bechor. If the guy dies, his wife is exempt from yibum. If he has a sibling, he would have a mitzvah. He would have the mitzvah of yibum between him and his brother would be relevant. All of those things. It's a halacha that he can't marry. Okay, I know it's hard to imagine, but sort of think about it's like the category of like psuadaka. Okay, we tend to think mamzer is more big in terms of your whole legal child, but it's not. It's just a halacha of not marrying. So what we're saying is the only offspring that is not a legal child is one that results from a non-Jewish mother, essentially either non-Jewish or a slave. Okay, that is the only type of a child that is not legal.
Non-Jewish offspring.
Right. Although slave is like a quasi status, but yes, yeah.
A mamzer can marry a convert.
Right. That is correct too.
And
okay.
if the non-Jewish woman converts, will she and her children be? Well, they aren't going to be subject to the secondary arayot.
Let's not go there. Oh. Okay, so the Gemara says like this. What? Yeah, yibum or chalitza. I mean, he's not allowed to do yibum, but if he did, it would be binding, and he has to do chalitza. Yeah, exactly. All right. So the Gemara says like this. Okay. So ben tomal avicha hotzei v'amarachmana achos rehi l'rabas achos mishifcha v'amarachmana ben tomal avicha hotzei v'amarachmana achos rehi. The Ema, thank you. Ema ben shamalo avicha kayam ben shamalo avicha hotzei v'amarachmana achos rehi l'rabas achos mishifcha v'odas kochavim. So how do you know that verse that recognizes this offspring as your sister is when the woman who couldn't be in the house is an Isra Arayos? Maybe it's when the woman who couldn't be in the house, as it were, the woman who couldn't be married to your father, was a shifcha or non-Jewish woman, and maybe that's considered your sibling. Okay, so we have now two categories of people that marriage is not binding with. One is Isra Arayos, and the other is slave or non-Jewish woman. How do you know which one to say is a legal offspring and which one is not? So Amakra Baseisha Savicha, Nishiyeshlo Isha Slavicha ba. A woman that marriage is possible. Pratla Chosa Mishachva Vavodas Kochavim. Okay. So the Gemara says, Umara Isa, again, fine. You have two categories now. Marriage is impossible either with a rayos or with non-Jewish women. What allows you to say that one is a legal offspring and one is not? Mistavra Chayve Krisos Havilei Larabos. Now it makes sense that the incest prohibitions, the Arias prohibitions, it is a legal child. Why? Shekain Tafsi ben Kiddush and Alma, because somebody else could marry them. Might be your sister, but somebody else could marry her. So she's not completely out of the category. As opposed to a non-Jewish woman or a slave woman, no Jew could marry her. So that's completely excluded from the category. Rabbi, the opposite says the Gemara, Shivcha v'ovedes kochavim have leil rabos. You should have included the children of a non-Jewish woman and a slave. The megaira l'didei nami tafsi bekedushin, because they are at least theoretically able to be. You're theoretically able to marry them. All they have to do is convert or be freed. As opposed to your sister, you can never marry. So maybe from your perspective, these women are considered more potentially marriageable, and therefore should more be considered your child. So the Gemara says, "L'chi megaira," fine. When she converts, we'll talk about it. But right now, in her current status, she is completely off limits to you and to all Jews, as opposed to your sister that is not right now completely out of the category of marriage. So therefore, yes, ironically, we include arayot, even though a marriage is impossible between you and this woman, because it is possible between her and other Jews. And therefore, she is fundamentally within the marriageable context, and therefore the child is your legal child, as opposed to a non-Jewish woman, the child of a non-Jewish woman or of a slave.
In other words,
Okay. I'm sorry, I skipped a line. L'chi megaira gufa achrinahi. I'm sorry. Okay. When she converts, if she's another person, then she'll be like it's katan shenola. But right now, I'm sorry, I stopped too short. So there, right now, in this state, she is not marriageable at all by you. You can't say hypothetically she's marriageable with me, because then she would be considered legally a different person. So it's this person, right? And that's what we said before about the whole katan shenola. So this person is not marriageable by you now, and not even theoretically marriageable by you, because were she to convert, she would be actually legally considered a different person.
So
Yes.
The two categories are forbidden marriage as opposed to something else.
Well, there's three categories. There's forbidden marriage. There's four categories. There's out of extramarital, which has not even a havamina. Was havamina, but whatever. Clearly not a problem. Negative prohibition. Marriage is not allowed, but marriage is still binding. Also, they're more obvious that the offspring in that case, even in or out of marriage, since in theory marriage is possible, is a legal child. And then we have the two final one, which is prohibited by kares, where marriage is not only not allowed but not binding, and a non-Jewish woman or a slave. And both of those marriage isn't theoretically possible. One of them, the child is your legal child with the Isser Arayot, even though the child is a mamzer, and the other is not. And the Gemara says the basic difference is that in the kares case, this woman is still marriageable within the Jewish community, and she's not completely excluded from the category, as opposed to the non-Jewish woman who no Jew could marry her. She's completely excluded, and even though hypothetically she could convert, that would make her legally a different person. Yes, David.
If a woman converts after she already had the child,
Yeah.
What's the status of the child to the man? Is that his child?
No. Katan shenola, no legal relationship.
No legal.
Right. Yeah, you had a question, Phil? No. Okay.
This
Yeah.
may be a very technical question, but I'm asking anyway. So, hypothetical. So you sleep with, a married woman, right?
Yeah.
Adultery. Don't you both have to be put to death? So how comes this? So then, isn't the child?
There weren't
already dead?
witnesses.
So
There
like,
weren't
how can the
witnesses.
child be considered yours anyway to inherit you? It's like a
What do you
person
mean?
inheriting you.
No, what do you mean? There weren't witnesses. I don't understand.
Oh,
Okay. All right, moving on. Okay, so the Gemara says like this. Okay. Rabbanan, so the rabbis, all that was learned from the pasuk of your sister, your father, the daughter of your father's wife. It's only your legal sister if your father could have theoretically married the mother. So for Rabbanan, the rabbis who learned that to tell you there's a separate prohibition of when it's also your father's wife's daughter. So and they learn it out for a law about arayot. Where do they know this idea of what's considered a legal sibling or a legal child? So where do they know the idea to exclude a child of a slave or of a non-Jewish woman? That's not your legal child. It says by the case about a slave who's had children, that they should be for the master, not for the father. So you see, they're not considered the offspring of the father. Now that's of course the maid, the slave. That's not the case of the non-Jewish woman. We'll get to that. For Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, what would Rabbi Yosef Yehuda say? Doesn't he get it from that pasuk? Why? That's a pretty obvious pasuk. Why does he need two psukim? So chad b'shivcha v'chad b'avaras kochavim. One pasuk is by the slave, and one is by a non-Jewish woman. But tzrichin, you need both. Yashmun and shivcha had it just said the offspring of a slave is not your child. Because they're not considered to have general family recognized relationships. I mean, this is to some degree it reflects the sort of societal reality, that slave families were often broken up and so on, and slaves would often be sort of sexual property and question about knowing who's related to whom and so on. But halachically what that means is that even as slaves, they're not really recognized in terms of their familial relationships. And therefore, it's more obvious that the offspring of a slave would not be recognized to be the child of the husband or of the father. But non-Jews that are considered to be related, child to parent, and are the familial relationships generally are legally recognized. Aim low, maybe that would not be excluded, and maybe the offspring with a non-Jewish woman would be a legal child. So you need to tell me even a non-Jewish woman. Yes, have just said in the case of a non-Jewish woman, that's because she's out of the Jewish category completely, and therefore the offspring wouldn't be recognized. A Jewish female slave, right? All slaves, in the case of Eved Kanani, are obligated in the negative prohibitions and in the positive non-time bound, like women. So they actually have a very full type of mitzvah obligation, and therefore she's quasi-Jewish, right? Maybe the reason the offspring with a non-Jewish woman is not just because Kiddushin isn't binding. Maybe it's because she's completely not Jewish. Maybe a slave that's like quasi-Jewish. Maybe the child would be your child. So you need to say both cases, and that nicely points out the different type of logic behind them, right? The non-Jewish woman, that's what we talk about, like matrilineal descent. Mother isn't Jewish, child isn't Jewish. If child isn't Jewish, not considered your child. Okay, whereas by the slave, it's less about the Jewish identity and more about the fact that that's not like recognized at all in the concept of a type of a familial relationship. All right, the Limor says like this, Rabbanan. So that's why you needed two psukim. So how about the rabbis? Ashkan Shivcha, fine. You had the pasuk of Ishavi Yaladeha to tell me about a slave. Where do you know non-Jewish mother, the child is not considered your legal child? This is really the question about matrilineal descent. How do you know when it's the mother is not Jewish, the child is not yours, but also means not Jewish? Okay, here, so how do you know that? Well, we'll learn it out from the case of the slave woman. No, like we said, you need a special pasuk for each one. Slave, on the one hand, is because there's no familial relationships. That doesn't necessarily exclude non-Jewish mother, who there are familial relationships. So how do you know to exclude non-Jewish mother? I'm Rabbi Yochanan, so here it is, the big pasuk that's the basis for the idea, at least in the Gemara, the quoted basis for the idea that a non-Jewish mother, the child isn't Jewish. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Amar Kra, the verse says, Ki yasir pincha me'acharai. This is a case about not marrying off not taking non-Jewish children. So not marrying amongst non-Jews. So the pasuk is, I went to the pasuk. It's lo titchatein bam, Bitcha, what is it? Lo tikach livno. Don't take their daughter for your son. Ubito lo tikach levanecha, right? Because the daughters are always the ones changing their domicile. So ubito lo tikach levanecha. Why? Ki yasir et bincha me'acharai. Now there's a problem with this pasuk. They'll leave your son away from me. Presumably is going on. Don't take a daughter for your son because it'll lead your son away from me. But then it should be kitasir at bincha. The non-Jewish woman will take your daughter away, will take your son away from me. So it doesn't make sense. What's the kiyasir? So based on the kiyasir, the drasha is that we're going back to bitcha lo tikach livno. Don't let their men marry your daughters. Why? Because your daughter will marry out, and the husbands, so your daughter's husbands, okay, the non-Jewish husbands will take your son, meaning your grandson, away from me. Okay, that's how it's read. Because of the yasir, okay, so the only person who's the male here would lead your son away would be the non-Jewish husbands. So how are they taking your sons away from me? They're taking your grandsons away from me, which means the offspring of a non-Jewish husband and a Jewish wife is still your grandson, is still your child, okay? So that's how we learn, and then we say that, we'll say the same in reverse. Let's read this. Amar Kra ki yasir bincha me'acharai. So, bincha mi-Yisraelit, karei bincha, your son, meaning your grandson, that from the Jewish woman, from your daughter, is still your grandson, and therefore the husbands will take your grandsons away from me. Vein bincha haba min ha'avodas kochavim, but in the reverse case, where your sons took non-Jewish women, that's not karei bincha, that's not your son. Ela b'na, that's her son, and she's not Jewish. So there we get the idea that of matrilineal descent, all from that little yud. So therefore we know that if it's not your son, A, not Jewish, and B, also not legally your son for all these other areas, for inheritance and all these other things. I guess in theory you could have imagined that it's not Jewish, but still he inherits from me, So it's the idea here, I'm throwing in the not Jewish. The Gemara's concern is more directly about, is it legally considered part of your family or not? Who are his siblings, who's his father, okay? But obviously connected to this idea of not being your son is also the other idea of not being a Jewish. But let's just finish a little bit. I'll take the question. Amar Avina, Shma Mina, we hear from this, Ben Bitcha Ba Mina Oved Kochavim Kari Bincha. That so which is pretty much what we just said. Your grandson that comes from a non-Jewish father but a Jewish mother is still your son. Fine. Lema kasava ravina ovi kochavim va'eved habal bas Yisrael havlad kasher. So 1 minute. So can we therefore infer from this that now that we're saying that it's still your son with a Jewish mother and a non-Jewish father, still your grandson, and we're seeming to say it's not problematic at all. So should we say the child is completely kasher, meaning and not a mamzer? You might remember before we had the idea that a non-Jewish father makes the child a mamzer. We don't rule that way, thankfully. But the Gemara is saying, so that sounds like what you're saying here. You're saying it's your son, not problematic. So the Gemara says, no, we're not saying totally not problematic. He the mamzer lo have, it wouldn't be a mamzer. Okay, but kosher nami lo have. We wouldn't say that the child is totally kosher. Yisrael pasul mikri. Okay, he would still be considered somehow an invalid Yisrael. So he's your son, legally your son. He's not a mamzer. He's Jewish, but there's still some type of a problematic that he had a non-Jewish father. Okay, now the Gemara here doesn't elaborate on this, but this becomes a large discussion elsewhere. And a big discussion lahalacha, because normally you say, what's the legal status, halachic status of somebody who had a Jewish mother, not Jewish father? You say, fine, whatever, Jewish, no problem. Obviously they wouldn't be a Kohen or a Levi if it was a boy, But other than that, okay, totally Jewish. But actually, this Gemara indicates that the fact of a non-Jewish father, you might remember we even had a position before that would be a mamzer. The Gemara is rejecting that, but the fact of a non-Jewish father might create some idea of a psul, and that becomes an issue, a debate whether we paskin that way. And the big issue is about whether if it's a woman, whether she can marry a Kohen. A woman who has had a Jewish father and a Jewish mother and a non-Jewish father, is there some idea of a psul that enough creates a problem for a Kohen? That is a major debate in the Gemara, in the Rishonim, and so on. Big issue that's hinted to over here. I see this question. I just want to read to get to the bottom, and then we'll take the questions. Okay, so the Gemara says, "Habashivas umas ksiv." 1 minute. This pasuk here, it says, Lo titchatein bam, don't intermarry with them. It's talking about when you go into the land and the 7 Canaanite nations. So maybe all of this is only by the 7 Canaanite nations.
That was my question.
Okay, good. So you see, you wait long enough, all the questions are answered. It's only by the 7 Canaanite nations, and by others, maybe it is considered your son. Okay? Because remember, now we're saying that this is a pasuk that is the basis of saying that the offspring with a non-Jewish woman is not your son. Maybe that's only for the Canaanite nations, it's true. So the Gemara says, no, ki asir l'rabbos kol ha'masirim. No, it says when they will lead away your son from me. That idea that the possibility of intermarriage causes your children to be led astray. That concept is relevant to all non-Jewish intermarriage, and therefore it's not limited to the Shivas Amamim. So the Gemara says 1 minute. Hanichal Rabbi Shimon the Darsh time of the Kra. That's going to go into Rabbi Shimon. That's willing to say that we look at the reason behind the pasuk, and therefore we interpret its parameters based on the reason. So a good example of this, or the classic example, is it says, you're not allowed to take collateral the garment of a widow. So what if it's a rich widow? So Rabbi Shimon says, oh, well, in that case, it's okay. And Chachamim say, no, it says widow, it doesn't mean categorical. Rabbi Shimon thinks that we can identify the reason behind the pasuk. I won't go into now what that reason is, but I think we can all understand intuitively that when the Torah speaks about widows, presumably we think it's talking about poor widows. Okay, so he says we can identify the reason and use the reason we understand to interpret the parameters of the prohibition or of the mitzvah. So that's Darshin and time of the cross. It says, according to Rabbi Shimon, if it says, I'm explaining this right now a little different than Rashi for simplicity's sake, some other time we'll worry about Rashi, but he says, If it says ki asir bincha, it's telling you what the concern is. So if the concern is ki asir bincha, that'll tell you that we're talking about kol hamasirim, anybody that can lead your son astray, not just the 7 Canaanite nations. So according to Reb Shimon, this pasuk is talking about all non-Jews, and that's where we learn that the children of non-Jewish women are not your children. So the Gemara says, okay, so that's good for Rabbi Shimon. El Rabbana and Minalahu, the rabbis who don't agree with Rabbi Shimon, where do they know that the offspring of a non-Jewish woman is not your child? Maybe this is only by the 7 Canaanite nations. So the Gemara says, Man Tana de Pali Galed Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon. No, remember, we said up till now that Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda knows the offspring of a non-Jewish woman is not your child from the pasuk about Ervas Eishes, Bas Eishes Avicha, only a child that your father could have married the mother. So this question that we need a different pasuk is only for those that argue with Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda. Right? Is that clear? Remember, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda learned the idea that it's only a child of an offspring, that marriage could have been possible from the pasuk of Ervas Bas Eishes Avicha. Then we've been saying, oh, but those that argue with him, where do they learn this idea of the child of a non-Jewish woman? So now we're saying that you learn it from Ki Asir Pincha. This only works according to Rabbi Shimon. Fine. Rabbi Shimon will be the opinion that argues on Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda. So if you don't hold of Rabbi Shimon and you don't hold that you can learn out the Canaanite nations, all the nations here, you'll learn out this idea from the pasuk that Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda has about the daughter of your father's wife. You had a question, yeah.
I'm going back to the Jewish man and non-Jewish woman have a child.
Yeah.
Then if the woman converts, she becomes the man's husband, right?
Right.
If the child is converted at that point, does he become the father's son?
No. You asked that before. No, the answer is
Well, I
no.
was asking a different way.
Right, no.
I didn't ask if they converted.
No. And even if she converts, they would still have to get married in
Right.
order to become, to be married.
Right.
Right.
Oh, I see. So the
Yeah.
child forever.
Everybody,
not that
right.
man's son.
Exactly. Yeah.
Why does the Gemara have to make a distinction between Shifcha and Obedet Kochavim? They're both non-Jews.
No, because the Shifcha is quasi-Jewish and she's chayiv in
So
mitzvahs.
it's because she's on she's
Yeah.
close to becoming Jewish.
Yeah, I mean, she's not just close, she's in some middle state and
Right.
she's obligated in mitzvahs. Yeah.
Could that language of soul for the Jewish woman and the non-Jewish man could just simply mean from being Kohen or Levi? Like, because they don't.
No, so the Gemara here doesn't explain what pasul means. So we're not just saying it based on this word. There's other Gemaras that are part of this conversation. Right? From this Gemara, you would not have known what the word pasul means. Right, exactly. All right, so that was a pretty heavy Gemara about the idea about legal children. It's again, that the mamzer, people can be, and mamzer is still a legal offspring and a legal sibling, just means can't marry, another naturally born Jew. And that child born out of wedlock certainly isn't a legally, does not have a different legal status. And the only issue would be a child born from a slave or a non-Jewish woman, which we learned is not a person's legal child, and also we know not considered Jewish. But here the emphasis was not legal child. Yes.
Is the Gemara in this sugya assuming that Obedet Kochavim is not shaykh to Sheva Mitzvot?
That's not relevant. It's not shaykh to our world of mitzvah. Okay, Mishnah. Chav Gimel Amud Bet. Back to Yevamot. I wonder how many people are saying, "Oh, good, can we get back to Yevamot topic?" Well, we're back to Yevamot topic. Okay, so we're done with the arayot and we're done with the mamzer issue. What's that? Is that my? I have a weird ringtone. I got to change. Okay, anyway. Oh my gosh. All right. Mishnah. Mi shekidesh achas mishtei achayot. The any of the ways of mem kidesh. Nosin get lezeh get lezeh. So Reuben went over to Rachel and Leah, and he gave them kiddush, and he married one of them. And make it better, Yaakov went over to Rachel and Leah, and he married one of them, and he didn't know which one he married. Okay, so
That happened.
so how exactly you don't know which one you married? You forgot. You made some snai. Anyway,
You're
what is he going to do? Identical twins. So no saying what? The father-in-law mixes it up. Okay. Anyway. No, they were under a veil when he gave the money. No saying get Lizev, get Lizu. So he can't continue, he can't marry either one of them, right? Because if he goes ahead and marries one, it might be his wife's sister. So can't live with either one of them, even after divorce. So he has to divorce both, and they want to go ahead. Now he can't live with them. They want to marry other men, so he has to allow them to marry other men. So he has to give a get to each one of them. Each one might be his wife. Okay. Now, mate. Now, if he died, v'lo ach, and he had echad, and he has one brother, cholitz lishtehen. This person would have to do chalitza to both of them. Why? Because he can't do Rachel and Leah now fall before. We'll make it. We'll stop being cute. So Reuven went ahead and he married either Rachel or Leah. Doesn't know who. Reuven died. Now Shimon. So if Shimon goes ahead and does Yibum with Rachel, that might be okay, but it might be Leah's really his sister-in-law, and then he just had sex with Achos Zikukaso. Remember Achos Zikukaso, right? Leah would be quasi married to him. Same would be if he would go ahead and do Yibum with Leah. If she's really his sister-in-law, fine, but it might be not his sister-in-law, Rachel's sister-in-law, and then he gets sex with Achos Zikukaso. So he goes ahead and he does Chalitza. Okay, now if he did Chalitza to Rachel, okay, if Rachel was actually his sister-in-law, good. Leah could walk off end of day, and he could even choose now. He could not go ahead, though, and marry Leah. Why not? Because then that would be Achos, not Zikukaso anymore, but Achos Chalutzaso. Okay, we haven't discussed this yet, but if he did Chalitza, that becomes quasi like divorce. And if a man divorced a woman, right, he cannot marry a woman and her sister, b'chayeha. His first wife would have to die. Just because he's divorced from his first wife, he still cannot marry the sister. Right? Is that clear? Can't marry two siblings as long as one of them is still alive. So if he did chalitza with Rachel, then Rachel is chalutzaso, and he cannot go ahead and marry Leah because that would be achos zikukaso. Okay, if Rachel actually wasn't his sister-in-law, then it'd be fine. Then the chalitza is meaningless, and he could go ahead and do yibum or chalitza with Leah. But because Rachel might have been his sister-in-law, and he had to do chalitza with her, he can't go ahead at this stage and marry Leah. Okay, so therefore he has to do chalitza with both. Each one of them needs to be freed. There's no way he can do yibum with one. There's no way he can do chalitza with one and yibum with the other. He has to do chalitza with both. All right, is that pretty clear? Do I have to illustrate that? You got it? Okay, fine. Okay, now, hayulo shnayim. Now, let's say he had two brothers, Shimon and Levi. Echad choletz ve'echad miyabein. Now, in this case, this I'll illustrate. Okay. You've got Reuven, who's you have here Rachel and Leah. Okay. We don't know which one he's married to. Then he dies. Okay, now you've got Shimon and Levi. Now, one of them does chalitza and one does yibum. Why? Okay, let's say Shimon does chalitza with Rachel. Okay, he does chalitza. So now, if Rachel is actually his sister-in-law, fine. So then he did chalitza with her, and that was all she needed. And Levi can go ahead and marry Leah. Do yibum with Leah. Why? Because Leah anyway was not even married at all. She's not achos chalutzaso. He isn't the one that did chalitza, right? It's only because he did chalitza it becomes like they were quasi-married, like it was a quasi-divorce. So then this is completely irrelevant. This was the Yibum story, and he gets free to go ahead and why not marry Leah? That would be if Rachel actually was the wife. Let's say it turned out what was his sister-in-law. Let's say Rachel wasn't his sister-in-law. Let's say Leah was the sister-in-law. Okay, so this act of chalitza was meaningless. Okay, it was done to some random woman. Okay, and then he's doing yibum with Leah. Wonderful. So that also works. So one does chalitza with one, the other does yibum with the other. Now that you have to do it in that order. Because if he starts by doing yibum with Leah, that works if Leah is his sister-in-law. But if Leah isn't his sister-in-law and Rachel is his sister-in-law, then he just had sex with achos zikukaso, right? So first you have to remove his relationship with Rachel, do chalitza, in case she is the sister-in-law. That got solved here. She's no longer zikukaso. She's not chalutzaso because Shimon did the chalitza, and that frees him up to do yibum with Leah. Yes.
So if Rachel is the wife,
Yeah.
and then Leah isn't anything to Reuven, right?
Right.
And then Shimon does chalitza with Rachel,
Right.
and then Levi marries Leah. Why would you call it yibum? Call it. It's just.
No,
it's
you're right.
marriage.
If this is the yibum scenario, then that's marriage. Correct.
But what if he doesn't know if he needs to do yibum or marriage? Isn't that
Oh no, because Yibum is always preceded with Ma'amar, with a Kiddushin anyway. A normal Yibum done the right way. Yeah,
Yeah.
you would do a Kiddushin and Yibum too,
You do
right? You
Ma'amar
wouldn't
just
just
in
do
case?
Yibum. What?
You do Ma'amar just in case? You do like
No,
this?
you always do Ma'amar preceding Yibum if you're doing it the right way. So it's a good
No, but
question.
if it's not Yibum, then you do Ma'amar.
Yes, if it's not Yibum, Ma'amar is Kiddushin. Any Yibum is preceded by an act of Kiddushin, rabbinically. So even if this is, so it's a good question, even if this is not his sister-in-law, part of the process of Yibum consists of Ma'amar, which is Kiddushin, and
Are they-
Yibum, which is basically like Nisuin, and they start sex.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
in his act of Yibum, he's doing an act of Kiddushin and Nisuin. What?
It's totally just semantics. They're basically the same act.
Well, this is semantics to let you know that this is this is rabbinic because it's to let you know that this is in the context of Yibum and this is rabbinic. Okay, but the act is the same act.
Okay.
This isn't exactly the same act. This is sex. This is like chuppah, etc., which is the context of sex, but not exactly the act of sex per se. Okay, but it boils down to pretty much the same thing. All right, so now, kidmu v'kinsu ein motzin miyadam. Let's say they went ahead and Shimon did not do chalitza. Shimon went ahead and did Yibum with Rachel, or what looked like Yibum, and he did Yibum with Leah. So in that case, okay, when Shimon did Yibum with Rachel, he did a bad thing because Rachel might not have been his sister-in-law, and then he was having sex with Achos Zukukaso. Okay, he shouldn't have done that. That was bad. He shouldn't have had sex with Achos Zukukaso. But he went ahead and did it. Now Levi went ahead and did Yibum with Leah. Okay, now in this case that was totally fine because that was the one he had Zika with, and that was the act of Yibum. Now Shimon B'diavad can continue living with Rachel because she stops being Achos Zikukaso. Because as soon as Levi did Yibum with Leah, any relationship Leah had to Shimon went away. Right? She was only Zikukaso because it had to be sort of, it was supposed to have been because there was a mitzvah of Yibum. Is this clear? I got some blank stares here, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. If Leah wound up being the real sister-in-law, then we had a problem. Shimon was not allowed to have sex with Rachel because it was Achos Zikukaso. But this was Zikukaso only because there was a mitzvah of Yibum that was waiting to be done. Once Levi went ahead and did the mitzvah of Yibum with Leah afterwards, then this Leah stops having any relationship with Shimon. She's no longer Zikukaso, she's not Chalutzoso, and Shimon can continue living with Rachel. Okay? Yes? Clear? So that's why if they B'diavad did it, although Shimon, the first one who did the act of sex, was wrong, because that might have been Achos Zikukaso, they're allowed to continue to stay married after they've both done Yibum. Okay? Where were we? Now, let's say you have Zeni Yodea is a Kidesh, Zeni Yodea is a Kidesh. Okay, Zenos in Shnei Gittim, Zenos in Shnei Gittim. Now, of course, to make it more confusing, so Reuven and Shimon both maybe did some type of a weird thing, so we don't know who's married, and they both did it with both sisters. Okay, so each one of these sisters, well, one is only married. Each one only did it with one of them. But anyway, one is married to one is married to the other. We don't know. I guess one could be married to none of them if one did the same act with the one that was already married. But anyway, okay, it's the same type of scenario, except
That's even worse because it's married to two sisters.
Yeah, right. Except we don't know. Except that it's not just we don't know who's married to Reuven. We also don't know which one of them is married to Shimon. Okay. So, Shtei Achim, Shneim Shekishu Shtei Achayot. Zeinu Yodei is a Kidesh, Zeinu Yodei is a Kidesh. Zenos in Shnei Gittim, Zenos in Shnei Gittim. So, if you want to free them, obviously you can't consummate the marriage because it might be your wife's sister. True about Reuven and Shimon. You want to free them, you have to give a get to each one of them. Each one has to give a get to both because Rachel might need a get from Reuven, or she might need it from Shimon. Leah might need it from Rachel. Leah might need it from so they need to get it from each one of them. Mesu, now they both died. Lezeach or lezeach. Okay, each one has a brother. Actually, I shouldn't have done Reuven and Shimon. I should have done an unrelated person. Reuven and who?
It's like Gershon here.
Gershon. I'm going to do Barak. I've been liking Barak. Okay, they died. Okay, now you've got Shimon here, And Barak, I don't know who you have. You'll have Nimrod. Have some good biblical names. Okay, so anyway, all right. So, okay, Mesu, Lazel Chuzeach. Each brother, the same way the live brother had to do a get, is the same as the live. The same way the husband had to do a get, the surviving brother does chalitza. Same idea. Okay, now he had one brother. He had two brothers. Okay, so what are you going to do? So Hayochid cholet shtehem. So Nimrod there gives a get does chalitza to both, the same way his brother, the husband, would have given a get to both. The Ashnayim. So now basically, if he's done a chalitza to both of them, the relevance of this has basically been pushed aside. Right? We've neutralized the presence of another possible husband. So then you're back to the original scenario. Reuven was married to one. We don't know which one. What did we say when he was married to one and we don't know which one? One does chalitza, one does yibum, right? The fact that we had another one, fine. You did your chalitza. You got out of the picture. And now we're back to a guy who died with two brothers. So in that case, hayochid cholet Hashem, v'shnayim echad cholet v'echad miyabein. One does chalitza, one does yibum, because the chalitza either it worked, and that was the sister-in-law, and then the yibum is just stam marrying another woman, or the chalitza was the wrong person, and then he could do yibum, the real act of yibum, and it wouldn't be achos chalutzaso, because Levi wasn't the one who did yibum his chalitza. Shimon was the one who did chalitza. Okay. If they went ahead and they both did yibum, ein motziin miyadam, they're allowed to remain married, because now basically, even though the first act might have been achos zikukaso, now that the brother is married to the other one, everything is okay, like we said before. Okay? Each one has two brothers. You got Shimon and Levi here, and I don't know, Nimrod and Asa down here. Okay? I don't know why I'm giving Barak such bad brothers. All right, anyway, so clearly they're not part of Yaakov's family, is why. Achiv shel zeh cholitz la'achas achas, va'achiv shel zeh cholitz la'achat. Achiv shel zeh miyabim chalutzaso shel zeh, va'achiv shel zeh miyabim chalutzaso shel zeh. Okay, so this is already a little bit more interesting. In this case, basically, here's what we do. Shimon does chalitza with Rachel, and Nimrod does chalitza with Leah. And therefore, and now Levi does yibum with Leah, and Esav does yibum with Rachel. Okay, why does that work? It looks the following way. Okay, Shimon did chalitza with Rachel. Okay, so Rachel is now. If there were no other brothers, we said Shimon does chalitza with Rachel, and Levi does yibum with Leah. That's what we had said before, right? Because that either makes this was the yibum situation, and then he's marrying just stam a woman, or this was like the unnecessary act, and then he's doing yibum. Okay, so that's what we said before. The only thing is that he can't just straight do yibum with Leah, because Leah might have been married to, right? Might have been married to Barak. Okay, and therefore, now that Barak is dead, she is waiting for yibum. The woman waiting for yibum is not allowed to stop marrying another guy, so that's why she got chalitza from Nimrod. No problem. So in case she was the one that was married to Barak, she's freed because she got chalitza from Nimrod. So this chalitza frees her. This is the scenario we dealt with before, right? That's the way to look at it. Reuven dies, one person does chalitza, one does yibum, right? The only problem is because Barak was married to one of them, maybe she can't do yibum. Maybe she was married to Barak. Okay, fine, Nimrod did chalitza to her. All right? Is that clear? You got it? And then the same thing is that allows this part to work, and then the same thing is reverse. He does chalitza, he does yibum, that's fine. But 1 minute, maybe the one he's doing yibum with, Rachel maybe was married to him, no problem. Shimon did chalitza. Okay, so basically each half is what we saw before, but the presence of the chalitza from the other half just frees her up. Yes.
This is the yibum isotope paragraph.
Thank you. So now let's just finish this Mishnah. Okay. Now let's say you had two chalitzas done from one side of the family. Okay, you had chalitza and chalitza. Fine. So now they're both out of the picture. Okay, they're out of the picture. So it says, Kiblu Shtayim B'Kinsu. What does it say? So, Lo Yibnu Hashnayim. Don't both do Yibam. Of course, don't both do Yibam. Because then, once these guys both do Chalitza, they're out of the picture. We're back to where we were before. Reuven dies. Don't both do Yibam. The first guy who does Yibam will be Achos Zikukaso, right? You're having sex with a woman who might be the sister of the one you really have to do Yibam with. So when these get out of the picture, we're back to the idea they both shouldn't do Yibam. One does Chalitza and one does Yibam. However, Kidmu v'kinsu ein motzim miyadam. If they both did Yibam, they're allowed to stay married because once, and even though if Shimon did Yibam with Rachel, it might have been Achos Zikukaso, right? But once Levi did Yibam with Leah, Rachel stops being related to the Zakuk. I'm sorry, once Levi did Yibam with Leah starts having any relationship with Shimon and he can stay therefore married to Rachel. Okay, so it's all basically the same idea, except we're introducing another family down here to complicate things. But once you remove this other family, we're back to the idea that either you do Chalitza, you're supposed to do Chalitza and Yibam. If you did Yibam first, that you shouldn't have done because that might be Achos Zikukasa, but once Yibam was done with his sister, with Leah, that got Leah out of the picture for Shimon and he can continue to be married to Rachel. Okay, I hope you all got that.
No, that wasn't too bad.